Hi there. We are so excited to be with you tonight and completely honored to be able to share one of our passions. Shasta and I have been working on this for a couple of months, so we are absolutely thrilled. Since we are spending the evening together, we thought we would introduce ourselves dating app style. So let me see if I can. Here we go. This is me. You can see coffee, water, wine. I am an early riser. I am a dog person, and I am constantly looking for my phone. I am coming to you live from my basement in Evansville, Indiana. I am a former television news reporter. I worked in television news for 15 years, and then I spent 10 years leading family engagement for the third largest district in Indiana. Shasta?
Thank you, Patricia. I first want to thank everybody for being here. I'm so excited. And I want to personally thank Patricia for allowing me to be part of her presentation. I'm just so honored that she worked with me to be able to be here with all of you. So my dating app would be I love coffee, water, and Moscow mules. Learning is a gift. Sharing your knowledge is a power would be my saying. I love animals. I may have gotten almost hit by a car running to go pet one, but we won't talk about that. I am an educator, a trainer for the NEA ESP Professional Growth Continuum. I also help present and create micro-credentials, and I am a mom. So I'm always looking for my keys, even if they're on me, I'm looking for them. I don't know how I misplace them all the time, but again, thank you for being here with all of us. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so as someone who is passionate about professional development and creating spaces, brave spaces, and really focusing on growing as ESPs, I'm going to talk a little bit of what we do with NEA and our union. So part of what we can do for communication and learn more about how to communicate is the ESP leadership competency. And this is a NEA leadership framework that reflects developing multiple leadership and engagement with communication. And it is a level 1 foundational, and we'll get more into what that means in a little bit. And yeah, go ahead and go to the next slide. So I love the ESP Professional Growth Continuum. This is something that I am a part of, and I think is so important. If you have not had a chance to look into this or understand what it is, it's amazing. And part of the communication piece is it's easy to follow. So it's the ability to effectively listen and communicate, written and verbal, with a diverse audience, including students, parents, guardians, staff, visitors, and community. And as we go along with this presentation, you're going to learn so much more about this. I think there is a site that you can go to that Kimberly can drop into the chat box for the PGC continuum standards. But a little bit about this is my personal experience and thoughts with this is it's an amazing opportunity for all ESPs to develop on their trainings and grow as an individual, grow inside their work, and earn badges. You can, it depends where you work, but you can earn, like for us, we get PTSB credits, where credits for our education. And it's a great way to feel valued. It's a great way to be more present in your school. And it's really important in our society right now is that communication piece of how we're seen and how we're viewed and how to stand in our power in such a way. And taking this standards and looking through this is really going to help with understanding how to do that. Okay, go ahead into the next slide. There are 8 universal standards within the micro credentials. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit. So if you look at this blue circle, you're going to see that I am an ESP, and that are 9 families of ESPs. So that's going to be our circle. We are that inner circle that is ready to expand. And this is the growth continuum framework. And it provides a professional foundation for universal standards for every career family. So the 8 universal standards are levels of continuum or growth opportunities. And communication is awesome. And it is one of the standards that you can take. So I'm super excited that I'm able to talk about this. There are many ways toward implementation to this. So NAA is an advocate for professional support staff, and they have prepared these how to communicate effectively and culturally with these foundations. So we have the inner circle, and outside of that circle is the ESP Universal Standards. So here are 8 standards that you can take. So communication, cultural competence, organization, reporting, ethics, health and safety, technology, and professionalism. And there is a link that you can go to check this out. So as an ESP, we can take these standards, and in these standards, you're able to advance in that. So we have 3 advancements. So you can be proficient, you can come in and be foundational, proficient, which is stepping a little bit further. And then we're going to have an advanced mastery piece, which is you are trying to be the best. You're growing. It's a continuum. You're really trying to step out of your comfort zone and be that best communicator possible. So, and on the side, you'll see like RMML, and those means like role. There's different types of leaders. So you have role model, mentor, and leader. And I don't have a ton of time to discuss this, but I do want, if you have a chance, look on the NEA site, which you should be able to get in the chat, and look at these standards and look at what you can take for micro-credentials. I think it's such, it's an invaluable opportunity. I think the association is changing the future for ESPs because of this involvement and because of these opportunities. It's a great way for ESPs to have a voice and change how we are included in the professional development during the year. I think sometimes we don't have those chances as ESPs, and we need to be able to be that voice, to have those opportunities, to have professional development done by ESPs for ESPs. And as a format of the PLC is that helps the education standards, and you know, hopefully we can grow with that. Okay, go ahead and move on to the next slide. Let's see. So check this out. I am so excited. We have a new NEA learning management system, and it's a communication course for ESPs by ESPs. So excited to have this. I know that NEA has worked really, really hard on getting this for everybody, but it's a self-paced online course. It is not a prerequisite for micro-credentials. You do not have to take this beforehand, but it does help you understand a walkthrough. Like, it literally walks you through on how to how these standards work and how to develop. And it's a professional growth continuum space that is out of this world. Like, I can't, it's amazing. Let's see. So this is the first year that it's been active, and it includes all ESPs. It is a professional development opportunity. And I have received, like, I had a couple people look into this, and I've gotten really good feedback on how it's presented. We are working on NEA is working on to change information on how these opportunities for ESPs are presented so that it's easy to follow. And it is a space of inclusion. It is a space that will help you be engaged. It is a space that you're able to really be knowledgeable on communication and interact and just have that space where you're like, oh, these epiphanies are happening. And it's just a really great way to be professional growth continuum, a professionally growth continuum before pursuing a micro credential. And this course is, like I said, not a prerequisite, but it is a course that will help you move forward to a micro credential. And then next slide. So I briefly want to discuss the ESP you can validate your knowledge and expertise in communication by this PGC standard stack, which is amazing. I hope you can take a look. And it's developed by ESPs for ESPs, and it's a great way to grow professionally and personally. And it's a way to take a step into a new journey that is easy to follow. So I think sometimes as an ESP, we have a hard time stepping out because people write our narrative for us. And it's time that we write our own narrative. And this is such a great space. All these information and all these resources I'm giving you is such a great space to really build on ourselves and how we communicate and how we can stand in our power. And I think it's phenomenal. And then, so if you have a chance, please look at the ESP PGC micro-credential stack. And again, we're going to give resources at the end where you can look at all of this. And then we also have the building winning teams. So this is paraeducator teacher team stack, which I think is so important. And all the micro-credentials in the stack have something to do with communication. So if you have a chance, please check it out. It's understanding and applying a communication style for team success. And as we know, as ESPs, as I have been one for 17 years, that communication is that first puzzle piece that you sit down to make the full, beautiful picture. So it's really important that we put that piece down, and that communication can help us grow in so many ways. And so it also focuses on effective communication and responsible communication, which I think is awesome. So responsible communication would be key to building lasting and trusting relationships. It talks about stakeholders, partners, stuff like that. And then the effective communication is a process of exchanging ideas and thoughts and knowledge, and how we are putting out our communication and how it's being received. So that's, communicating effectively is really important. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat, but I'm going to kick it off to the amazing Patricia right now.
Shasta, thank you. That is amazing work, and your enthusiasm is just infectious. I just think it's incredible. So hopefully folks will check out everything that you just shared. And again, all the links will be at the end of the session. So here are today's objectives and goals for the rest of the evening. We'd like for you all to leave with an understanding of the critical and essential role you play in family engagement and school-home communication. We'd like for you to be able to understand the importance of creating a welcoming environment, be able to recognize and identify effective and ineffective communication by analyzing examples, leave with an understanding of the importance of tone and the ability to analyze the tone of communication. Tone is everything, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then be able to use some simple tips to handle challenging situations with families, because they are bound to happen. So if those are today's goals, what's not today's goal? I was floating in a tunnel toward a very bright light, and then a voice told me I had to go back and finish listening to the presentation. Even though this is virtual, we hope to make this as interactive as possible. We've planned some reading activities, some writing activities, and we'll be asking you to participate a lot in the chat. So hopefully your fingers are fired up and you are ready to go. So you all are absolutely super communicators. You may not know it, but when it comes to school-home communication, you have superpowers. Here's the first one. You create really powerful first impressions that can make or break relationships with families. And it's really because of a psychological principle called the halo effect. And what the halo effect says, basically, this is all the gobbledygook there, but what the halo effect basically says is, if I think you're funny, I am also likely to think you're smart. So if you attribute something positive to someone or someplace, you are likely to then associate other positives with that person or that place. First impressions are formed within 20 seconds. So if you are able to be welcoming and warm and build those relationships, if you are able to form relationships with families, it will spill over to the rest of the school. You often have more interaction with parents and caregivers. Let's face it, I may see my teacher maybe once or twice a year. And frankly, maybe not all of those conversations are going to be really positive. ESPs have superpowers because they may be the only school staff members that families see on a regular basis. That gives you an opportunity to really build relationships with families and get to know them. You often interact with families daily, and those interactions can kind of bookend. So if you are able to begin the day in a really positive way, communicating effectively with families, that can change their whole impression of the school and frankly, change their entire day. Your frequent informal interactions can build strong relationships. The woman on the right is a woman that I love dearly. Her name is Mrs. Scharf, and I'll tell you, I was so thankful Mrs. Scharf was in my village when my kids were going through elementary school. She was the manager of the extended day program at the elementary school that my kids attended. And what was beautiful about Mrs. Scharf is that when I would go to pick up the kids every evening, she would not only tell me how their days were, what kind of mood they were in, she was also able to tell me what they were interested in, who they were playing with, what games they participated in while they were at daycare. And that allowed me to extend and reinforce that learning. You know, it also allowed me to know what kind of kids I was getting for the rest of the evening, you know, what kind of moods they were going to be in. But it was absolutely invaluable. She was a super strong communication highway for me at a time, frankly, when I really needed it with my kids. Shasta?
Thank you. This goes along with what Patricia was just saying, and building those relationships with our families and our students. And really, you're often more approachable because when we're out on the playground, that's who the parents see when we're talking to their students. You know, when we're the bus driver that picks up their kids every morning and drops them off, we're those faces. So go ahead and sorry. So families, I'm going to go through, you know, why we're more approachable. So families are less likely to be intimidated. Families are less likely to be afraid of power dynamics, and families often have positive perceptions of ESPs. And that's absolutely true. And maybe you can even think of a story when a parent or a caregiver came and approached you because you are that approachable person. You are that safe or brave person. And you have that positive energy that you're giving out with that communication piece. And then number 4, you have knowledge of school and home. So, you know, you see students in their natural habitat. You can share the information, not only with the parents, but and the teachers. One thing to watch out for, though, is to know your contract, because I know where we live, I can't communicate as much with the parents as the teacher can. So just make sure you know your contract when you are communicating, so that you're not over communicating with whatever your contract says. And then you see students in an informal, less structured setting. So you know who they are. You have built that relationship. You have communicated, you have had that time to communicate with those students and those families and build those trusting relationships. You see changes in families and family situations. You can share this information with the teachers. You can share this information with admin. And it's such an amazing power that we have to be able to be those communicators to help our students, that we can be those transition pieces that teachers don't have the ability to do, but we do. And so that again goes back to our superpower as well. You understand school jargon and policies. Yeah, we know those jargons and policies. We have to follow them all the time. So yeah, I think that's super important. And you can answer questions because we are knowledgeable. We do have the time to communicate with our parents and communicate with our families. And you bring an outside perspective to education. You can help families navigate in the world of education. You can advocate for families. We have the ability to communicate in a way, and the time to communicate in a way, and the opportunity to communicate in a way that not everybody does. So education support professionals, we rock. And stand in your power. Like, just be so thankful for what we do because we are amazing. Just saying. So remember, parents won't tell school staff if they don't understand. So I know that I think Patricia is going to be talking about this shortly, but the way we communicate, our tone, the way we shouldn't abbreviate anything. We need to be clear on what we say and how we say it. And I think part of being education support professionals is we take the time and we're real and we are approachable, and we have that communication style where they feel as if they're heard and they're not feeling belittled. So, sometimes parents feel intimidated and they won't tell school staff if they feel overwhelmed or they're struggling, but they may tell us. So I think that's super important to remember. And it's important to share what you know. And I'm going to kick it off to Patricia.
Well, I think what we wanted to do now, Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind dropping this in the chat, we wanted you to spend a few minutes reading about the importance of ESPs. And we won't be able to circle because I'm not sure everybody has printed this out, but in the chat, if you would share the ways that you feel that the education support professionals helped build bridges with Mrs. Jones, please do so. So take a moment to open the PDF in the chat, give it a quick read, and then we'll look at some of your thoughts in the chat. Oh, someone's not able to open it. Can the rest of you open that? Hopefully, just start sharing some of the things that really pop out at you with this story. We have some yeses, so no. Okay. Thanks, Wendy. The tone in her voice is welcoming. So if you're not able to open this, what I would encourage you to do is when the webinar is done, just spend a second kind of reading it. The ESP makes the student feel welcomed. Yes, it's just absolutely a lovely story of the impact that ESPs have when it comes to building relationships with families. It's a story about a woman who is enrolling her nephew in school, and just how everyone in the school made it a point to make this woman feel welcomed. And the overall impression that she leaves with the school is one of positivity. Yes, so smiles heard and felt explained well for them to understand. So we encourage you to read that, because it's just an incredible story and really speaks to the impact that you have every day. So Shasta, I think we're going to talk about bridging the communication gap with families and the fact that it begins with being welcoming. And they're saying, see what I mean? You're never just sure where they stand with them. That's kind of how some of our families feel, right? Okay.
You want me to start with the welcoming?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why is it important to be welcoming? Because effective, and I talked about this earlier, and again, you can go into your PGCs and really learn more about this, but and micro credentials, but effective communication is the center of a memorable customer experience. So we have to remember 30% of users would stop interacting with a brand after a single unpleasant touch point. 3 out of 4 will share if they have a positive experience. And that kind of goes with the halo effect. If we see a beautiful person like, on TV, then we're like, oh, they're smart, and we have to have that product, right? So there is a little thing you can click on the bottom. If it looks like, for the 5 essential factors, and then creating a welcoming environment. So how do we do this? Well, for me, it's empathetic listening, which is like acknowledging and speak to the families, making sure that we are really being open to receiving and listening to them, not thinking of how to rebut them, but to really listen and to be able to respond, acknowledge what they're saying, smile, greet parents and caregivers by names. This is so important, making them feel important, and you're remembering their name. Be friendly and helpful. Provide clear directions, help parents get where they're going, acknowledging them, being friendly, having those nonverbal show is so important when we are talking to parents. Express thankfulness and remember to breathe. I have to take a moment to take pause as well, because sometimes my mind is going and I talk so fast, and just take a moment to breathe and really listen and enjoy that moment that we have with those parents. Remember, there are no redos for first impressions. So remembering when you think about a time when you have met someone, and what was your first impression? What made that a good impression? What made that a not such a good impression? But be that ESP that really takes the time to be self-aware and self-reflect on how we want to present ourselves, and change that narrative for who we are in our building and how we interact with our families. And first impressions require extra actions to change. So I think Patricia's going to be doing this, but we are going to talk about serve as a translator for families. Are you doing this, Patricia? Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So if the first,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, please go.
Okay. If the first step is to be welcoming, that's how you build the relationships with the families. The second, really kind of getting back to that superpower role, is serving as a translator for families. And here is the first way you can do that: by remembering to communicate conversationally as if you are talking to your best friend. So I know you're not going to be best friends with all of the families that you work with, but if you think to yourself, I want to communicate in a way that makes a connection, like I would be communicating with my best friend, you will naturally use language that will connect with them, and you will naturally use the right tone. Here's what I'm talking about. So we often in school write something like, please contact the school to request assistance, right? This isn't a stretch. Maybe you've written it yourself. Instead of something like this, if we were going to communicate conversationally, we'd say, please reach out if you need help. Here's another example of what I'm talking about. I'm writing to inform you of the fact that your student has been non-attendant for 5 days of school. Pulled right off of an attendance letter. How about just a note to let you know your child has missed 5 days of school? If we send home something like that, we're more likely to get the reason why that child has missed 5 days of school, right? We're more likely to open the communication highway. How about this one? Martricia School understands there are instances when a student may need assistance with meal funds. Therefore, the following guidelines will apply. Very formal, right? We wouldn't say that to our best friends. If you need help with meals, please let us know. Here are the guidelines for meal charges. So when it comes to communicating with families, we want to use a really conversational style. And when we communicate conversationally, we need to avoid using $5 words. And it was Mark Twain that said, don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do. So we have to be aware of those $5 words. And this is what I'm talking about. implementing, to a subset, academic, appropriate, assessment, post-secondary. Those are all $5 words when it comes to families. They can be a barrier to communication and a barrier to understanding. If you look at a word like subset, our families don't come home from the grocery and say, Honey Crisp is a subset of apples I really like, right? It's not a word that they use in their everyday life, but it can sneak its way into our school home communication. As ESPs, you recognize these words and you can help translate them for families. And at the same time, you can help point them out to the staff members that you work with. Here are a whole bunch of $5 words. What is an assessment anyway for families? It's a test. See, so we can translate them. What is data? Information. A referral sent to the principal's office for behavior. Academic standards. We say this all the time to families. What the state expects your child to know and be able to do by the end of the grade year. And then this is one of my pet peeves. We always use the word guardian. You know, the people who love our students and get them to school are not guarding them. They're caring for them. So just that little change of a word can make a really big impact. Here's another one of my favorites. Why? Why do we do it? What do we say in the real world? Stormy weather, snowy weather, bad weather, lousy weather. But in education, we insist on the inclement. Yeah, I'm not even sure I know how to pronounce that. So we are going to have you do a little translating of $5 words. So what I want you to do now is read the $5 word on the screen, translate it into a 50-cent word or words, and then type your translation in the chat. Okay, everybody ready? Fingers fired up? Here we go. Excluded. Your child will be excluded from school. So how can we get rid of that $5 word and communicate really conversationally? What could we say? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Left out. Your child will be left out of school, kept home, unable to attend. Absolutely. Beautiful. Left out. I love it. I had, your child will have to stay home. You know what? You tell me my child doesn't have his vaccinations, he has to stay home. I'm going to make sure he gets those, right? Unable to attend. Perfect. Next one. Truant. I'm calling to let you know your child has been truant. You know, I started in my district. I had no idea what this meant. Late. Yes, your child has been late, missed, absent. Absolutely. Perfect. I'm calling to let you know that your child hasn't come to school the past 2 days. All right, last one. Ooh, post-secondary. This is also one of the ones that what is post-secondary? At high school, after high school, college and career. Options, right, after high school. But we say post-secondary to families, they have no idea what we're talking about. Yeah, see, you guys are demonstrating your superpowers right there in the chat. I had after high school possibilities, college, career, and job opportunities. See how easy that is? So when families come to you, you can translate for them and you can also point this out. The simpler the words, the more easily they're translated and understood in other languages too. So if you are working on putting a flyer together, or you're working on putting a letter together or a social media post, if it's written in a really conversational way with really simple words, it will translate very easily. And just to kind of put a punctuation mark on this, the superintendent in my district was doing a Facebook Live on how we were going to reopen school. And he kept talking about keeping kids in cohorts. And finally, this mom said, can you explain what a cohort is? So oftentimes, if we ask our families, they'll tell us, but most often we don't ask. But remember, they may tell you. So that's the power that you have. We also want to avoid acronyms. Here's a whole bunch of acronyms. I'm not going to make you read this. Just suffice to say, I got this email. I had no idea what this person was talking about. When it comes to acronyms in education, this is often what we do. We send home the acronym dictionary, right? But I would ask you, is this helpful? Because I may now know that a BIP is a behavior intervention plan, but number one, the word intervention is very scary. I don't know what that is. And that still doesn't tell me what it is. So in broadcasting, if it's not an acronym that we're sure everybody knows, like FBI, CIA, or IRS, we don't use it. In education, if we're going to use an acronym, we have to define it. It's not enough for us to say the words that the letters stand for. We have to say a BIP, or behavior intervention plan, is the plan we will work on together to make sure your child has the support they need to be successful. And then maybe give an example. When you put it this way, what parent wouldn't want an intervention plan, right? So pointing out the $5 words and acronyms that you hear can just be powerful reminders to other educators around you. Really important role. When we're translating for families, the second thing we want to be aware of is streamlining our information. Look at that, woman drowns in school-related emails. It's not just the amount of communication we sometimes send home to families, it's the amount in each of those communications. It can absolutely get overwhelming to a point where they don't know what they should pay attention, what is important, and what's not. In broadcasting, we talk all the time about communicating for the ear. So we are communicating in the spoken word, and we know we only have one opportunity to get your attention and tell you something. So for our purposes, we can think of the ear as your attention span, okay? So the ear can only digest about 1 fact per sentence. It's really the way we talk. It's really conversational. The ear quits listening when it takes too much information, when it takes too much effort. And perhaps that's happened to you before. You've been listening to somebody speak and you start thinking to yourself, I wonder what I'm having for lunch, right? Or you open something on your phone and you fully intend to read it and you get 2 paragraphs down and then you close it, right? That's because the ear's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. The research is we now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. Goldfish can hold their attention for 12 seconds. Ours is down to 8, and that's largely due to these, our devices. So when you're thinking about streamlining your information, streamlining the information that you're sending home to families or that you're communicating conversationally to families, pare it down into absolutely what is essential. Leave out information you can share at a later time, and leave out all of the unnecessary details. What we want to do is strive for giving parents information that will help them help their students at home. We want to give them information that will result in student achievement. Remember to put the most important information at the top, just in case they open it and they get just 2 or 3 paragraphs down. And then remember, parents read the information on their phones. So we sit at our desks and we design our flyers, or we compose our emails, or even we do our social media posts. And the best tip I can give you is to then send whatever you've done on the computer that may look perfectly readable, and it may look short and digestible. Send it to yourself and open it on your phone, and just make sure that it looks readable. When we simplify our communication, we're not dumbing it down. This is really important. The information is as complex as ever. We're just conveying it in a way that is understandable. We can never and should never underestimate our family's abilities to participate in the learning process. The responsibility for communicating effectively is on us. We are asking them to enter our world, so it's on us. I am convinced that everyone on the webinar today could understand rocket science if it was communicated to us in a way that was in conversational style and understandable. I'm convinced of it. So we should never underestimate our family's abilities to support learning at home. The better that you understand information, the better you'll be able to bridge the communication gap with parents and caregivers. You know, I was talking to Shasta when we were putting our presentation together, and in many ways, ESPs are like the school's genius bars, right? like the Apple Genius Bar, where you come when you have a lot of questions. That's the role that you play. So the more you understand the information, the language, the processes, the better you'll be able to bridge that communication gap. So step number 3, when it comes to communicating effectively with families, is really to be aware of your nonverbal communication, your tone. I will tell you, tone is everything when it comes to communication. It really is not what you say, it's how you say it. Tone, body language, nonverbals make up between 65 and 85% of communication. So what I want you to think about when it comes to tone is that there is emotion on both sides of the communication equation. There is emotion on the part of the person doing the communicating. How are they feeling? What kind of day are they having? What kind of space are they in? How do they feel about families? And then there is emotion on the part of the person receiving the information. What's going on in their life? What kind of day are they having? What space are they in? So when you are thinking about communicating effectively, whether it's with families or your staff members or frankly your spouse, you have to take into consideration the tone on both sides of that equation. Tone really starts with you, the person doing the communicating. And it really starts with how you feel about the parents that you're communicating with. Do you believe that they want the best for their children? And frankly, I have not met a single parent or caregiver who doesn't. You have to get in that space too, first, because to communicate effectively, oftentimes it starts with what's in your heart. And then you need to think to yourself, how do you feel about what you're communicating? Do you feel good making that positive phone call home? That's going to be reflected in your tone. Are you a little nervous to share something that might not be so positive? That'll come through in your tone. And remember, parents are going to interpret that as having to do with them. And then, from a really kind of down-to-earth standpoint, how's your day going? If you're having a really lousy day, that's going to come through in your tone. Let's say you're working the front desk and all stuff is hitting the fan back here, right? And you pick up the phone and you say, "Can I help you?" The person on the other line is going to think that emotion is directed at them, but in fact, it has nothing to do with them. So just thinking about, am I in that space? If I'm having a really lousy day, maybe this isn't the day to send the email. How do you feel in general? Are you doing your self-care? In many ways, we're all operating at that like 8, 9, 10 stress level. So doing that self-care and bringing ourselves down to that 2, 3, 4 can really help us make sure that we're striking a really partnership tone, a really friendly tone that will build relationships with families. So what I want you to do now is put on your parent caregiver hat. Read the following examples of communications and think about the tone of the messages. And in the chat, type 1 or 2 words to describe the tone of the messages. Okay, so we're going to kind of step outside of our educator role and we're going to step into the shoes of our families and think about how they're going to receive the information that we're pushing out. Here's your first one. It's an actual Facebook post, frankly, taken from my district. So what is the tone of this? Then I'll ask you a couple other questions. Oh, stopped reading after the first line, right? Formal, stiff. Very formal. Jargo, yeah, jargon all over. Dry. Technical. So how does this person feel about families? How do they feel about having families come to the school board meeting? Not inviting. Yes, other people are more important to them. They've lost interest. I know. No passion. It's just robotic. Right. You almost get the sense that this person doesn't want families to come. And then I love that some of you are identifying some of the $5 words, and then stakeholders. Yeah, very formal. So how would families receive this information? It's cold. Mm-hmm. Meh. Families would receive it. Meh. I love that, Natalie. That it's not important. Right. Okay. So we're going to take this from formal to friendly. What do we think about this one? How does this one feel? What's the tone of this one? Much better. Thank you, Christina. Human. We want to hear from you. Right. Very inviting. This one's like, come on down. Right. And we also did a couple other things with this. You'll notice we took out all of the jargon. Obviously, we took out the formal tone. Um, we actually included the address of the administration building, because let's say I'm a family and I take time off work and I ride 2 buses and I show up and I'm at the wrong building. That's not really going to build a good relationship with that family or create warm and fuzzy feelings. And then the other thing we did is we highlighted, remember, if you want to speak, you'll need to sign up ahead of time. Because again, I'm taking time off work, I'm getting myself there. And I've got something to say, if I find out that I had to sign up ahead of time, I'm going to be upset. So what this does is it also kind of prevents some issues from having, but absolutely, it's a lot more pleasant and a lot more engaging. Okay, next one. This is, ooh, wait, don't read it yet. This is a message that goes home on the first day of school. It's on busing. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no one involved in the education process that doesn't think on that first day, this is going to go well, right? Families feel that too. They come out feeling really positive. Now I'll let you read. What's the tone of this one? How does it feel? Ooh, very authoritarian. I am the boss. We control, dictator. Right. How does this person feel? Why are you yelling at us already? It just started. That is exactly how I feel about it. So how does this person feel about families? How does this person feel about families? Bothered. They're defensive. Yep, they've been burned before. So we're going to make sure that you know, yeah, they're not happy. So how do families feel when they read this? How do they feel about the school? Yeah, the school only wants certain, it's very insensitive. Nervous. Families feel outraged, right? Like they're not on our side. I feel like I'm in trouble before the year even began. Scared and intimidated. Absolutely. Okay, so we're just going to call this person a curmudgeon, and we're going to change it into something very congenial. What do we think about this one? So let's think about how this person feels about families, how it's received, and then kind of that overall engagement, building relationship stuff. Inviting and inclusive, much better. Let's work together. Safety first. Concerned and inviting. Yeah. Out of the gate, we kind of established this shared goal, that we know you want your child to be safe too. And we're not just wanting kids to get in trouble on the bus. We want to make sure that there's some safety there. We also make an ask, please partner with us and teach these behaviors to your child. We'll work, if something happens, we'll work with you if any issues happens during your child's time riding the bus. Yeah. Okay. Last one. This was an email I received. Benjamin did not, it's from a teacher. I'll let you read it. How did I feel receiving this? It's nothing positive. I was sad, negative, chastised. Yeah, I felt like it was my fault. Absolutely. Like I'm not helping my child enough. Yeah, it didn't, yeah, it seemed very, very stern. So what if she had written this instead? Right? Opens the door to communication and communication highway. Yeah, she's concerned. She wants to help. It's more about figuring out what's going on there versus getting me in trouble or getting Benjamin in trouble. So you can see how tone is really important in our communication. When it comes to improving tone in conversations, my biggest piece of advice is just to breathe before responding. Always check your emotions because, again, if you're having a lousy day, that's going to sneak its way into your tone. Take off your educator and school hat, and everything that you communicate, think about how families would receive it. Put yourself in their shoes. And then bring a fresh start to every interaction. You know, even if we have had a negative experience with a family, we need to give that family a fresh start. We may not know what's going on in their lives. And if we've done something that we're not really proud of when it comes to communication, we need to give ourselves a fresh start. Because again, we're all operating at that kind of higher stress level, and we just deserve to show ourselves and our families some grace. In conversations, you know how they say if you smile, then all of a sudden your voice is smiley? If you can feel friendly and calm, it will come across that way. Speak slower and softer with less force. If you've got a lot of different cultures in your building, just be sensitive and aware of cultural differences, especially when it comes to tone and body language, which unfortunately we don't have time to cover tonight. Always express respect and thankfulness, because every level of engagement that our families show deserves to be celebrated. Everything that I wrote in my district, I would say thank you for all you do to help your students succeed. Because at the end of the day, making sure students have a roof over their head and have food and, you know, get to school on time, that's a level of engagement that we should celebrate. And then remember that your goal is to build relationships with families that will help students succeed and serve as those communication highways so educators in your building can build relationships so that students succeed. When it comes to writing, again, breathe before responding. If you feel friendly and calm, that will come through in your writing. Read your work back to yourself and think to yourself, how does this make me feel? When I was going through graduate school training in journalism, we were taught that we had to vocalize what we were writing just to make sure that it was conversational and make sure that it had the tone that we wanted it to. So if you ever walk by and I'm writing, you'll literally hear my voice. And then have someone else read your work. Anybody walking by my office back in the day, I'd say, come on in here. Let me read this to you just to make sure that it's going to come across the right way. We want to make sure that we are moving away from formal authoritative tones to more friendly partnership tones, because when we are working with families, we are partners. They have an expertise and we have an expertise. Remember that our goal is not to be in charge, to win, or to be right. It's really to build relationships that will result in strong partnerships and student success. So the last step, the last thing we wanted to talk about today is preparing for challenging situations. They are bound to happen. Here we have angry parents on lines 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes we just have one of those days, right? This person wrote, either our son's kindergarten teacher is really harsh, or she meant to write terrific and got distracted. She wrote terrible. I mean, clearly just one of those days. We're all a little stressed out and busy, right? So when you're having one of these challenging situations, here's my top 3 pieces of advice. Number 1, reframe the conversation. If you're having a challenging conversation, reframe it. I used to do an entire training called Difficult Conversations. And I started to think to myself, why do I call it that? That's so negative, when in fact, they are just challenging. They're not difficult. And when you start to think about challenging conversations, you can start to think to yourself, they give you an opportunity to grow your communication skills. Or you can reframe the conversation by thinking to yourself, this is an opportunity to really learn what's going on with this family. Or this is an opportunity to get information that will help this student succeed. So reframing the conversation and thinking about it, not as difficult and not something that you dread, but something that will be helpful, something you can look forward to, is my first piece of advice when it comes to challenging situations and challenging conversations. My second piece of advice is be a thermostat, not a thermometer. So we want to stay at 68. We are even Steven. So even if we've got somebody coming in our office, whether it's a coworker or a parent, and they're at 89, we're going to stay at 68. Very calm. Or if you're at my mom's 74, which I tell her that's a hot day in Florida. But anyway, we're going to stay steady. We're not going to let somebody bring us up to a point where we are hot. We are going to stay even Steven. My last piece of advice is to view anger as an expression of love. I think this is really powerful. You know, anger not only is an expression of love, oftentimes it's an expression of fear. And if we are able to think about that, it will remind us that whatever anger or other strong emotions are being directed, they're not being directed at us. There's more going on to the situation, and more often, all of this anger, all of these strong emotions are expressions of love. Remember that all of the relationship building and de-escalation skills that you use with students can and should be used with families. Many times, parents and caregivers have also experienced generational trauma and stress. And remember that if you can communicate effectively using your words, information, your tone, and your body language, you can build the respectful relationships that will make all of these challenging conversations a lot easier. Shasta?
Yeah, thank you. We are running out of time, so I want to be respectful to our times, but I want for us to remember that we are leaders of our career families, and education support professionals you know, have so much to give. And so, you know, leadership is key, and how we communicate and how we represent ourselves is really key to our relationships with our schools and our parents and our students. So I'm just going to quickly go through. So put on your parent hat, think about how you might feel, pay attention to the ways you and your school communicate, create a standard of welcoming behavior, communicate the importance of the family's role to your staff, work with your teams in your buildings. Don't be shy, ask questions. The more you're informed, the better, you know, you're going to be able to communicate with our families and with our staff, and stay informed. Remember to take care of yourself. Sometimes we forget that. Ask for feedback from parents and caregivers. Be that person to, you know, help advocate for our families. Reflect on interactions and conversations. Show yourself grace. And remember, we are absolutely essential when it comes to communicating, the building relationships with our families. You are already naturals when it comes to this. That's what we do. And in understanding our families and communicating with them, and understanding their children and how to have the resources to help them. And you and your work are changing the lives of the children and our families. So communication and what we're doing as education support professionals are creating a kinder, more respectful world. Kicking it off to you.
Absolutely. And we wanted to end with this just because it's funny. School home communication is everyone's responsibility. This is the parent janitor conference. He says your kid throws up a lot. So you are not in it alone. It's everyone's responsibility. We have put, I have put a lot of what we talked about today and a lot of other good communication tips into a playbook that you can download if you hold your phone up and grab that QR code. it captures a lot of what we talked about today, but a lot of what we didn't have time. So I'll leave that up for a second. And then here is our contact information. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, that's us.
Thank you so much, Patricia and Shasta, for your informative presentation tonight. We are over time just a little bit, but we're going into our Q&A session. I know there were 1 or 2 questions that came in the chat. I don't think that there are any other questions that came into the Q&A feature, so we'll just ask those 2 questions that came in the chat. And my colleague, Kimberly Bertacci, will lead that, and then we will move on so that you can we'll drop the link in the chat so that you can get access to this PowerPoint and all the other handouts. So Kimberly, you want to go ahead and present those questions to our presenters?
Sure. One of the first questions, Patricia and Shasta, is can you relate this information, so tonight's information, to ESPs working in higher ed offices or district offices, really any spaces outside of the K through 12 school building?
Well, frankly, all of this, I'm not exactly sure of the question, but all of this is just strong communication, period. So there are districts that I've worked with that have taken all of the principles that we talked about today and everything in the playbook, and they have applied them to their internal communication. So it's really applicable to higher education, or frankly, any field that has its own internal language that has to interact with the public. I think, and when you think about it, we all have shorter attention spans these days. We all are suffering from cognitive overload. I saw something the other day that every single one of us sees the equivalent of 60,000 feature films worth of information a day, or so, something outrageous like that. So paring down our information, using simple words, making sure things are readable, making sure we've got an engaging tone, that's stuff that's good communication across the board.
Great, thank you. Another question, are there strategies for helping parents and caregivers share what they might not feel comfortable asking? So we're wondering kind of like, are there look-fors? Like what can ESPs look for to proactively support parents and caregivers, right? And how might an ESP encourage a parent or a caregiver to open up to them and share?
So as an ESP who works with parents a lot, and for the last 17 years, I think we need to put ourselves out there and communicate with the parents, but also be knowledgeable. So for instance, I can think of a story where I was the education support professional on the playground in the mornings, and I was working in kindergarten. And those parents would come to me, or I was the face that they saw. They would come to me and ask the questions. And sometimes I didn't know the answers, but I was just able to find them and direct the parents into the right direction. And there are, I suppose there's knowing your role and knowing your district, knowing your school, knowing your students are like coming to the first steps of being able to help those parents, and how we communicate, being that welcoming face, being that safe person to approach is always helpful, and making sure that they know that we are there for them. So taking that time to get to know those parents and approaching them and building a relationship with them. But Patricia, you might have some ideas as well.
No, I think you're exactly right. What's key is building that relationship so they will tell you if they don't understand something. That's where, being welcoming and if we can communicate well out of the gate at that like kind of tier 1 level, maybe they won't have a lot of questions. What I really encourage folks to do is just be very casual about it. Like, I don't like it when people go, do you have any questions? Because then all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe I should, you get very nervous, right? But if you say, are we all good? Or, gosh, yesterday a parent was asking me about this, that can kind of encourage them to share if they don't if they don't understand something or they don't know something. But what's key is building that relationship. And that's why all that stuff that Shasta talked about at the beginning about how you just naturally are going to be able to build that relationship a lot easier, oftentimes than like classroom teachers or administrators. And so just leveraging that relationship can be very powerful.
I have a question that's like a little bit, I don't have it like fully formed, so bear with me, but it's around the relationships that ESPs do have with family and community members and caregivers, and especially for those whose native language is not English. And the fact that, communication in native language is so important. I think that in many situations, ESPs might not realize how critical their ability to communicate in another language it is to the school itself and the administration. And I guess, is there possible for you to talk a little bit about communicating and stepping into your power as an ESP to advance the needs of the community members, the families that you're interacting with?
I don't know, I can take my experience with this. So there's a couple things that I know I have done, working with students and also families. So one thing that I have done as an ESP is making sure that, one, if I don't understand the language, that I'm comfortable with still approaching them and making them feel safe and that. But we can always have resources within our office that supports those families. And we also usually have someone in the building that supports families. We also can use translators when we're working with those students in the classroom. And I'm not sure that I'm answering your question, so I'm sorry. But I think working with families whose aren't native here or have the native language to communicate as well as they want or effectively as they want, it's really important for ESPs to take that time to get to know the families, take those times to find those resources to help those families be inclusive inside our building, and take the time to get to know their students so that those students are feeling safe and welcome when they come in, but they don't necessarily need to be the translator, like kind of giving them that step out so that they're comfortable within their space as well, is really important. Patricia, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I just think oftentimes we look at communication in that space, what you said, as being one way. I'm translating for the families, but I think what's important is that we remind all of the folks in administration that education is two-way, and that lifting up the concerns and the feelings and frankly what's going on in the lives of our families directly affects student achievement. So let's say we have a family that's new to our country. That's something we need to know. That's something that I need to know as a teacher so I can wrap supports around that student, right? So sharing that information and making sure that folks understand that it's two-way, and the information that our families have, the funds of knowledge, the assets that they bring to the table are invaluable to be able to move student learning forward. So I think that understanding that it's two-way, that they have really vital information that we need. And it's not just about, the rules, the regulations when the game is. It's more than that. It's like this family engagement kind of space. Did that help?
No, that was great. Thank you so much. And I think that brings our Q&A session to an end. Jessica, back to you.
To request a general session-specific certificate of completion as a participant of recorded sessions, please send your request by emailing espqweb nea.org. All requests must include the session title and the on-screen certificate of completion code. Session certificates will not be provided if your viewer code is not included in the email request. Note, due to limitations in our ability to track attendance after live sessions, requests for personalized certificates will only be provided to participants of live webinars whose attendance can be verified. The certificate received for viewing recorded sessions will be session specific, but will not include personalized names. On behalf of the Center for Professional Excellence in Student Learning's NEA ESP Quality Department, I would like to once again thank our presenters, Patricia and Shasta, as well as our participants this evening for a wonderful session. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and good night from the ESP Quality Department.